Hello and welcome to Tarikia. This is Dresden's Tale, episode 42, chapter 40 of volume 2. This is the show where we follow Dresden Fane. He's a man with a plan, a war to find, and a heart to heal. Our story exists in the violence and equity of the Keld culture, a place where we embrace the gloom and suspend our moral direction. I'm your guide, the writer, voice actor, and special effects genius, Lewis Nichols, and it's time to meet the Gaelics. It's not just a river, nor is it just the name of some old kingdom. It's a people group made up of 3 species, Minotaur, humans, and Tagara. A long time ago, the region was home to one of the strongest powers on the plain, and these guys ran it. They were the dreaded barbarians of the north. Some believe, especially the Gaelics themselves, that the gods first favored them with the knowledge of the right of strength. A long time ago, even before the first popes, they raided the rich farmlands of Finsel. According to historians, they were the cause of civilizations to collapse in Oster Ceti and even Kraus. Eventually, they fell. Some say it was the very land that rejected them, baking the fertility out of their rice paddies. It may have been a plague of jungle demons, or maybe a pandemic of disease. Certainly it didn't help. The early popes had a hard-on for exerting their will over every surviving kingdom left on Moldav. Whatever the reason, the only thing left are the faces of their descendants. If you count out the city of Camberg and other major settlements in the mountain territories, the population of Tarikia is 70% Gaelic. Unfortunately, most of the people live in those cities, making the Gaelic ethnicities nothing but a sizable minority. Gaelic humans are tall, dark, and occasionally handsome. They are numerous and spread throughout Moldav. About the shortest they get is the 6-foot mark and extend right on to the top of human normal range at a towering 7'6". There's not nearly so many Gaelics as there are Pats, but they are a notable ethnicity throughout the clans. Gaelic Minotaur are a similarly ubiquitous minority. In 2052, they were holding fast to a 35% share, despite recent introductions of the Odessan Jungo, Etwine breeds, and others from smaller tribes on Balestrand. Gaelic Minotaur possess sparled horns and varied brown fur. In some areas, they have a certain reputation for wildness, a carryover from the ancient berserker styles of fighting from the early days of Gaelic raiding. The last of this northern people group are the Seville. These Tagara are sleek black and excellent climbers. They once had a reputation as sneaks and assassins, but there are so few left, they are more likely to become villains in a children's tale than pose a real threat to your safety. They are a long-haired breed, considered beautiful and exotic. Just one more reason this ethnic group is in decline, as many have been taken by other groups as spouses, hence reducing the number of pure breeds. Of all the niche culture movements within the clans, the Gaelic ethnic purity movement might be the strongest. There's pressure on every single young adult in the people group to produce pure Gaelic children. At the very least, everyone has that racist uncle, but in many cases, it's the whole family. In Gaelic communities along the rivers, the onus is on making babies. Of all the Keld ethnicities, this is where the most pressure is put on women to stay home and let the next generation bring glory to the faith. And here endeth the lesson. I hear the sounds of combat, a glorious reverberation to any Keld, or fan of fantasy. Come on, I know you're here for the blood and glory. Let's see if we've found some. It's Prophecy Day, the 13th of Ebba, 2052 years after the fall. You couldn't gut a man with a war club, but you sure could shake things up a bit. Dresden landed his blow deep in the lizard man's stomach. A bit of bile escaped his mouth and shit from his ass, as some organ he couldn't live without ruptured. The dwarf howled in glee, taking another foe in the knee, as the line of mongoloids were more content on getting past him than fighting now. He didn't know where they were going in such a hurry, but they had started the battle. He and his fellows would finish it. Dresden checked a slashing attack with his shield and crushed the aggressor's eye socket with an overhand blow. Beside him, Orn barely kept up. "How many are there?" someone yelled. Several in the column had already fallen under the weight of numbers. "A lot," Sophia answered. She drove her broadsword through a shoulder and ripped away the arm to retrieve it. In the same motion, she caught another's head with a bash of her shield, then turned to stomp a fallen foe in the face. "They are no more dangerous than pissed-off egg lizards." Orn wasn't so sure. "I think 1,000 egg lizards might still be pretty dangerous." Dresden felt like he was in a river, a stone against the endless current. Dozens of lizards swept through without giving the warriors a thought. He struck one as it passed, sending it into a spin. To another, he bashed the knee, making it tumble so it was trampled by its own fellows. They passed down the trail to his left and right, some escaping into the jungle. Perhaps 1 in 5 stopped for battle, but it was enough for a challenge. The dwarf dove to the ground, throwing himself into a mass of oncoming legs. Lizardmen fell like tall grass under a thresher's scythe. Coming back to his feet, Dresden readied his next strike. That was the end of the lizards, but before him stood a troop of tall, dark-skinned humans and spiral-horned minotaur. Gaelics, Dresden thought. The dwarf grabbed at the head of a lizard-man corpse and pulled it up for the newcomers to see. "You with him?" "Shut up, Dresden." Sophia popped the dwarf in the back of the head. "Stand over there and keep watch while the veterans talk." Orn snickered. "You too, Furball." "It's not so bad being a rookie. I'm not even into my 2nd year. Of course, it's not my girlfriend giving the orders. She probably doesn't let you keep your nuts when you're out in public, does she, Furball?" Dresden crossed his arms and kept his gaze out into the jungle. Lesson number 1 in the militia of Biona was how to stand watch from the road. "Huh, you're all chatty all of a sudden. I killed 6. And you cracked your club." Dresden looked at the weapon. Bach! He searched around briefly until he found a discarded spear. "It's all the same to me." "Moving out in half an hour," Sophia informed the column, then started handing out assignments. Dresden spent his break stacking lizard man bodies off from the main road for priests of Oggs or Madrilla to animate later. Orn buried their own dead nearer the trail. One of the Gaelics swore to carve a plinth to mark the site with the warriors' names. Their next destination was only a mile down the road, the locals' village. Mud-walled homes surrounded 3 temples and an open courtyard where locals gathered to cook. Children cleaned pots under watchful supervision of a middle-aged human with only one arm. Around the outskirts of the settlement, older residents tended gardens or kept the village chickens and goats in line. It was a small and simple affair, but it was killed all the way through. Behind the Temple of Agamar was a weapons yard, spread out over 1/4 of an acre. Teenage boys and a few women wrestled as warriors looked on. Near the Temple of Abergrayon, there were communal workshops, one for each of the crafters in leather, wood, and metal. The latter was shared with stonemasons specialized in the making of bricks. Beyond it all, a low wall extended in a half circle, guarding the village from 3 directions. A tributary suited to canoes and flatboats protected the 4th. "They're all Gaelics," Orn pointed out. Dresden nodded. "I've traveled with a few. Good people from what I can see." "Yeah, but what if they gang up on us?" The dwarf looked at him, dumbfounded. "What are they going to do? Eat us?" "I've heard they're very violent, easily offended," the Tagara said. For the 3rd time, Dresden took a look around. There were plenty of warriors keeping an eye on him, but there was nothing wrong with keeping an eye on strangers from another clan. Most of what he saw was mothers and children, and fathers hard at work. The dark skin and fur of the humans in Tagara didn't bother him any more than the spiral horns of the Minotaur. He could smell the roasting goat and hoped they'd be invited to the feast. It was Prophecy Day. A minor holiday for sure, but any excuse for spiced meat was fine by him. You're an idiot, Dresden told his friend. Orrin might have responded, but Dresden shut him out. Instead, he found himself looking uneasily at the middle temple. The structure was strongly built from the local timber, but likely wasn't much over 1,000 square feet. It called to him. Abragrayon, the fairy lord, one of the gods with provinces in prophecy and magic, a god of nature, providing the wilderness and all its bounty to the Keld peoples. The door pushed open under pressure from his hand. He was surprised. Dresden didn't remember making the decision to approach. He stepped in anyway. The interior was one room, lit by a single window. A ray of sunlight blasted through at an odd angle, creating a wealth of shadow. Half shaded, half illuminated, a 10-foot stone-carved representation of a tree stood covered in small birds. A buzz caught his ear, and he turned to see a tiny, yellow-black speckled hummingbird hovering just inches away. The animal representation of the god. "Your son killed my love," he told the bird. It didn't answer. A human might have cried, a minotaur would have raged, and Iquirda would have taken to the plains and ran until he could run no further. Dresden sat motionless, joints freezing into place, as they tended to do when a dwarf grew emotional. "I know it's not personal to you. I'm a piece of clay to be molded, not loved. You sent the lizardmen this morning and took more lives. Our dead surely had family, now robbed of their love forever. Those who remain grow stronger. I get that. I think you do love us, but not all of us. As individuals, we're just like flakes of steel flying away as sparks from a blade on a grinding wheel. You can't expect us not to take it personally. That's all I'm saying." I've just got one question. Did he expect the bird to answer? It's not easy being a Keld. Through his trials and hardships, Dresden couldn't help but question his gods, the culture, the very world he lives in. It's not a pleasant place. Yet, he doesn't reject it. He just works harder to understand it and his place in it. It's a complicated journey, and one that's going to take him a long time to complete, if he ever does. At least he'll get to eat a little goat meat and maybe have a pint of Gaelic ale. As for us, that's the end of another chapter. Hit that like button. Tell your friends. 100 subs by the end of Season 2 is a minor goal, but I think I'm just now starting to hit my stride. I've seen it from other content providers as they start out. The first videos, the nerves, and the uncertainty. Then they find their voice and begin to develop their content. Eventually, they're able to express themselves in a professional tone to the audience and begin to be taken seriously. Maybe another year, and I'll be there. Thanks for stopping by, my fellow adventurers. You didn't have to listen, but you did, and I appreciate it. I'm Lewis Nichols, and I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day.